Okay, good job. It is 5:03 and this meeting of the WSESU will come to order. This meeting is a hybrid meeting, which means that some or all of the public body is meeting remotely and some are meeting physically in a previously noticed location where the public may attend to observe, listen, and participate contemporaneously. Please note that while we will strive to provide means for those attending remotely to participate in the public comment period, there may be technical difficulties or reasons that otherwise prevent or interrupt remote public participation. Therefore, it is important to note that the open meeting law only ensures the public's right to participate and comment at a public meeting by attending at the designated physical location as posted in the notice and agenda. If a member of the public or the public body has technical difficulties accessing this meeting remotely, please alert us by email. In the event of a technical difficulty that cannot be resolved, we may continue the meeting if necessary to time and place certain. Please note that all votes taken during this meeting that are not unanimous will be done by roll call in accordance with the law. Pardon me while I make this large enough for me to see. Does anyone have any changes that they would like to make to the consent agenda? Or indeed any changes to the agenda? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes of 11/13/24.
So moved.
Thank you, Deborah. Is there any discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? The minutes are approved. And now we move on to public agenda and public comment on non-agenda items. Martha, I guess you were faster, but only by a
Oh my God.
Mine is going to be brief. Okay. Martha Noyce, Brattleboro resident. While a lot of my comments have been redundant, I want there to be some significance in my words of encouragement for board members here, anyone viewing remotely, to the budget that is almost set in place, but to be aware of items that could be presented within the next few weeks or months, expenditures that could be dissolved or collaborated with another building, another person, and use any state funding or people within the town of Brattleboro to meet these positions or to dissolve positions. And keeping in mind that I am really just hoping for some efforts of board members, people remotely, principals, teachers, efforts that you have truly been creative with your budget, collaborated, consolidated, or said, nope, can't have it, sorry. Thank you.
Jody?
I have a few things, is that okay?
Yep. If you can state your name and town. for the
Jody
record.
Normando, Dummerston. I'll bounce off of Martha right now and by saying that we need to cut items that really don't necessarily right away affect the children, the students. I went through the Dummerston budgets for when my son was in school, and I went through the Dummerston budgets when my grandchildren were in school and the high school, and it's very interesting to see how things have grown and grown and grown. A lot of things were put in here during the COVID period of time that were only going to be here for a while, but they're all still there. There's a lot of bodies, and I get that from so many people up in Dummerston saying, oh my God, look at the cars in the parking lot, and you count the number of people who are there that we didn't used to have. So that's that part of it. One of the other things that I wanted to mention, because you're in the budget this time, has anybody ever done a study of the kids who ride buses? Because the buses do not appear very full. And the story I got one other time when I brought this up was the fact that the little buses were as costly as the big buses. I find that a little difficult to believe, But so many kids, the parking lot's full of cars out there, and so many kids drive to school, or their parents pick them up in all the schools, not just the high school. Parents, I look at Dummerston, for example, and when school opens up, the cars just roll in. When school's through, they just all roll out. And I'm just wondering if there's been a survey, and if there could be a survey before the school starts, how many kids are going to ride the bus, and make your agreements along that. I know you have multi-year contracts, but I would like to do something about the transportation part of it and maybe limit it. Another thing that came to my mind is I've just lost it. All the mentors that are here. We never used to have mentors, and my kids and grandkids graduated from Dummerston in the high school without having mentors. And the teachers, I cannot believe that the teachers are different. They're probably better today than they were then. So I'm thinking that that's one place that should be covered. Another question, and Frank, did you get my last email with my question?
I don't think I've seen it yet.
I sent it a couple of days, maybe Friday, but I asked you about one item that jumped out at me, and thanks for everybody, for Sean for sending me the warrants and stuff. But there was an item in the budget for a cornhole thing. And it seemed very expensive to me. And I wondered what it was, who it was for, why it was. And do you have any recollection of that? It was this fall sometime.
Yeah, and you want to engage in question and answer? I'm happy to do that.
It's not something we customarily do, but yeah, sure.
Yeah, so I would want to talk with, I think it's a phys ed instructor at the high school to understand how it fits in the curriculum. But just in general, we know that cornhole is a very popular way to engage students, families across the country. It's becoming super popular. It's very accessible, unlike a basketball gym or a football field. So I'm not surprised to see that sort of expenditure in a phys ed budget, but I would want the instructor to provide the specifics of the rationale for that.
It was very
certainly
expensive.
is within in that department budget, so it's not like it's over and above a plan.
It was very expensive. I play cornhole. I bought a cornhole thing. I have friends who built them. We have a career center here that could build them. And it just seemed to me, and in the scheme of things, it's not thousands and thousands of dollars, but you get item after item after item that's overpriced in my mind, then your budget goes way up. So I really would like to know why the expensive one were several bought? It appeared that there was only one that was bought. But, if you could get back to me on that, I'd really appreciate it.
Glad to do it.
Okay, thank you, Frank. You're very good at getting back to me for questions, but I was surprised that I didn't hear from you on this one.
It's a busy time.
I know, I understand. Thank you. I'm done for the time being.
Is there any?
Can I just make a suggestion?
Sure.
Can you forward that information to this board as well, Frank?
Sure.
Thank you.
And if I may,
Yes.
the cornhole set that you're talking about was custom made to have a bear, and it was $1,500.
Ooh, it's more than I remembered it was.
It's a big bear.
It's a big bear, okay. That seems exorbitant to me in the time when we were trying to cut budgets, but I'm only one vote. 2 votes.
Thank you, Judy. Is there anyone on Zoom who would like to make any public comment? Going once, going twice. Moving on. Moving on to the administrative report. Mark, you have updates for us.
Yeah, a couple of brief updates. Next week, there's no school in session for students. However, Monday and Tuesday are in-service professional development days for staff. Earlier in the year, I shared some professional development opportunities that were created by this whole school district and the curriculum office. Next week are very much school-based professional development opportunities. So there'll be some targeted professional development as well as balanced with some time for teachers to meet and plan together. So, and then I think the whole system's ready for an extended break, first extended break of the year. So that's what we have coming up before the Thanksgiving break. That's the main update that I have in terms of the report. I do see that there's an item about the principal mentor position.
Yeah.
Do you want me to speak to that?
If we're ready to move on to that, then we will. Yeah, please.
Okay. So it's a very valuable position. I believe it's an innovative position that we're lucky to have in our budget. I'll just, this information, but I'll just share some of the context of currently our principal coach primarily works with the BUHS team. In the past 4 years, we've had 4 principals, 2 principal searches. One of them was successful. We've had 2 different deans of students and 4 different iterations of the assistant principal and the principal team. I feel like we are at a place now where we have gone from really chaotic situation to a stable situation. However, all members of that team are still very young into their career, first or second year into their careers of administration. To have day-to-day and weekly predictable sessions of coaching and professional development, I think is just critical, at least for another school year, to continue to build that team. So folks know the mentor coach is available for phone calls, and this person will take phone calls from any principal, but primarily the work is being done specifically at the high school in building that team to move forward. I think great institutions do not, they learn from the institutional knowledge. And I think great organizations lean into that. And that's what we're doing with this position. That's what we're doing this year with Paul Smith in support of the curriculum office, as that entire office is new this year, except for Brendan Tucker's second year. A lot of the budgeting that we're going to review, Paul is a big part of that. And that's a lot of knowledge to just walk away from. It's critical dollars that we're accessing through grants. And to have a transition where Paul can help the team understand how to access and identify funds to support our budgets, again, I've used the word critical, critically important. Half of our team at the high school is currently in the leadership program. They haven't even graduated from their leadership programs. So being in a program and balance that with day-to-day coaching and weekly meetings as a group and individual, incredibly important in building the foundation of that team here on this campus. So that position has been reduced this year by 75%. Again, the focus is primarily on the high school team. Those are my thoughts on the position and the importance of the position moving forward, at least for another school year.
Discussion.
Clarification, what position has been reduced 75%?
The principal mentor coach.
It's been reduced 75%. Ah, okay. May I make some comments?
That's what I'm waiting
Okay.
for.
So first, as board directors, it is our responsibility to consider every position in the budget, whether it be a part-time clerk position in the central office or a new foreign language instructor in one of our elementary schools. Keen oversight of every aspect of the budget builds trust with the community who elected us to these positions. The second point, when this position, the principal mentor position, was created about 7 years ago, the district was in a very different financial state. Today, more than ever, we need to consider, as we've heard several times, how to develop a lean budget while still ensuring that the quality of instruction and support for our students is not negatively impacted. Third, we need to acknowledge that the principal mentor position is unusual and unique to our district. According to VSBA, it is not a position that other districts in Vermont commonly employ. In fact, we may be the only district in Vermont with a permanent principal mentor position. Fourth, about 2 years ago, when this was discussed at the SU meeting, Superintendent Spino remarked that, quote, "It is absolutely worth it to review this position every year." And you added, Principal Spino added, quote, "It may prove wise to eliminate it at some point."
I stand by those
So I
words.
think we agree on that.
Mhm.
So without doubt, the position is useful to some principals as well as vice principals. We've heard in the last discussion 2 years ago, the value of the position to new and interim principals and vice principals. We were told how the position may reduce burnout, increase confidence, and even help avoid union grievances. I also noted at that time that principals do indeed really have one of the toughest jobs in the district. This is unquestionable. And this is why we have the supports in place for administration, including the Vermont Principals Association, professional development conferences and resources, routine collaborative admin meetings and peer-to-peer coaching, advice from our own district attorney on legal matters, our diversity, equity, and inclusion department that, by the way, added a new principal position a couple of years ago. We have a strong system of instructional coaches and a more efficient MLSS that helps principals meet their goals. We have a reconfigured curriculum and assessment office that includes a second curriculum coordinator fully dedicated to the high school that also helps the principal meet her goals. And we have a superintendent with very strong experience and accomplishments in his former role of principal. So there is the argument that there is a requirement that all new principals with fewer than 2 years of service receive mentoring. This requirement, as we know, could be well met by temporary consultants, as is done by most other districts at perhaps far less cost. I think we need to ask ourselves, if this were a new position being proposed this year, would the board approve it? Could the grant money that funds this position be better allocated, be better spent by keeping some of the social worker, counselor, and paraeducator positions that were frozen in the last budget cycle as part of the 2% reduction? Could I believe it's $80,000 total. $80,000 for a principal position be better allocated to the additional reading and math tutors for those students who continue to struggle in this post-COVID time after ESSER funding has expired. To conclude, I return to the advice that our superintendent offered nearly 2 years ago and ask that the position be reviewed, that it be evaluated, with good, hard data on the hours the position actually entails. Frankly, the position is pretty invisible to the board, and we really have no idea how it's really been used. And that makes me uncomfortable in approving a budget that continues to fund it. I realize that this board may not want to sunset the position this year. But as Mark said 2 years ago, there may be a time when it is finally eliminated. So now I'd like to make a motion, and that is to direct the administration to provide the board with a timeline for the evaluation of the principal mentor position. Furthermore, this evaluation will include hard data on the number of hours administrators have availed of the position and convincing arguments for and against continuation of the position.
Can we put a pin in your motion just pending any further discussion from people who aren't the board? Is there anybody else who'd like to comment about? Jody?
Jody Mermado, Dummerston. I've had questions about this since the very beginning, because over the years, we've had some very good principals. And to me, a principal could work with another principal and not have somebody extra in there. Originally, I thought that this person was working with all the principals, and it now sounds like it's just BUHS and not
Person is available to all principals.
still available.
Yes,
But
but this person is formally,
But we've got some fairly long-term principals, and when he got into this position, Dummerston had a very long-term principal. Our principal now, I would still say is long-term. I just think it's a position that we do not need at all. And I am concerned, I agree with most of what Tim has said. You said he's been reduced 50% in cost. Can you tell us what the pay is, and is he still at a level where he may get benefits or not?
No.
So what level is he at?
he is paid like just over $10,000.
$10,000
the number?
I think it's between $10,000 and $14,000.
between, well, that's $4,000 difference.
Yeah,
Between 10 and 14, but without any benefits. And how many hours do you know, are the hours that he's working being tracked at all?
Yes,
And are you the one that's tracking them?
I can supply that. I didn't bring it tonight, but I can supply that.
Uh-huh. But okay, it might be nice to know that. And that's one of the positions that I feel is not necessary. I think there's an awful lot of support in all our schools, in all our budgets, for teachers, for principals. We've got a real, I mean, you take a look at the paras, you take a look at the sport teams, you take a look at his support. Not that it's something that, if we had all the money in the world, I would say no to. It's just that the fact that our budgets are going to be up, and they're not going to go down this year either. And if we get pushed around by the state, like it looks like we're going to be, things are going to be much more costly. And what they're going to be more costly with are administrative positions, not the teachers particularly, in my mind. I think that's what's going to happen. So I think we have to be careful about where we go so that we can come up. I mean, I'd love to have every position in the world for these kids, and I think we all would. But I don't think we can afford to do that, unfortunately.
I respectfully disagree. I appreciate your thoughts, but I respectfully
Yeah,
disagree.
I know you will. That's okay.
Okay, address the chair, please. Sean, because you're on the board, then Kim, and Paul.
Thank you. Thank you. So Sean Murphy, I would just like to sort of refer back to something that the superintendent mentioned, which was about the historical regularity and experience of the principal positions at BUHS. Everybody knows that one principal left, and then trying to fill the principal position was a struggle. We had really good candidates in a troika situation. But as Mark pointed out, they were all young. It doesn't take away anything from their skills and what they've been able to accomplish. But I think in light of the history of the administration at BUHS, that an expenditure of the amount that was mentioned and the importance of it to make sure that the success at the administrative team, the principal administrative team at BUHS, I would be in favor of supporting this amount of money.
Kim?
Yeah, I had no idea that the position was reduced 7 times.
Okay,
No, no.
Kim,
It's hard to hear, a
I
T and a
apologize,
K.
I will.
Oh, sorry.
So let's
Yeah,
do
no, I'm
last
sure it
names.
was my diction.
Let's,
Kim Price, there we go.
Kim Price,
My-
Brattleboro. Mark, now is the position 100% grant funded?
Yes.
And is it a grant that's specifically written that it can only be used for that position or can be used for something else?
I can defer to Paul,
Okay.
it's okay.
You
But
were,
I believe Tim takes precedent because he has
No.
something to say and is on the board, so.
No.
Okay. A few things, yes, I can clarify that. Something I want to preface it with, though, is to say, in the 25 plus years that I was curriculum coordinator, the district has had amazing stability of administration, and B, has gone out of its way to support raising new leaders. Mark can attest to that. We have other principals who have been supported largely through grant funding to either move into administrative positions or be supported one way or another in administrative positions. And I think the stability that this supervisory union has shown over that length of time is sort of part of that, of the reason for that is that we've been consciously growing leadership internally. The number of individuals who are internal to the system that have moved into leadership positions is, I think, probably close to unique in the state as well. And so for me, part of the deal, part of what WSESU does well is support its leaders. Secondly, with respect to the grant funding, Tim, most of the things, I think, if not all of the things that you mentioned could be otherwise used, with that money, can't be used with that money. That's Title IV money, or Title IIA money, which is teacher professional development money. And so that there are, we couldn't use that money to buy more paraeducators or more instructors, right? You can't use Title IIA money for that purpose, right? And further, so that if the concern is about the bottom line for what goes in front of the public in March, removing that position won't have an impact on that bottom line, right? Because it's grant funded. So as we think about the needs, let's not, and one final point. In looking at the budgets tonight, presumably later on tonight, you'll see that particular line hasn't been reduced by the amount that would be reflected in a 75% drop in the position. That's because we've shifted some of my work into that same, because it's the correct line item, into the line item. So that principal leadership thing is being reduced, but we're including some of my time in that particular budget line rather than in some other budget lines, because it conforms more with the purpose of that grant and that budget line, right? So don't, as you're looking at the budget, go, oh my God, it hasn't been reduced. It has, it's just that I'm in there too now. So all of that is to say, I think it's a valuable thing to keep an eye to growing and supporting our leaders, and the impact is not going to be, I think, what you think it will be if we reduce it or take it away entirely.
Martha, did you?
As Superintendent Spino spoke that a few years ago when this position was needed, there was a lot of chaos And understandably, however, over time, the principals have worked with this person, and as you said, they've become more stable and confident in their roles. But there's also been a reduction in their need, though they use this person daily and weekly. I mean, it seems there's been a level of weaning away, and I think it's time to dissolve the position and use the other supports that are in place, whether they're area principals or the VPA, to give them some other eyes and ears to support them.
Julianne, I see you out there with your hand up.
Hey, everybody. Julianne Egan, Demerson School Principal. Yeah, I would just, I just want to share a little bit of my experience. I am in my 6th year as a building principal, 8th year in administration, 15 years teaching experience. I really still depend heavily on this position and use Andy's guidance regularly in my role. I, use the that mentorship heavily in my first couple of years as principal, and I continue, and I continue that relationship because I cannot convey to you how complex these roles have become. It is so important that I do my job well, and that I am careful about my thinking. And I am the only administrator in my building. And so with that, that puts, and a lot of us are, right? We're the only administrator in our buildings, which puts us in a unique position. And the landscape is complex, and I don't see that changing in the near future. Each year comes with really unique challenges that I can say, even with the experience I have days where I am like, wow, I need, to really think this through carefully with someone I, have a relationship with who has the expertise, to support not only me professionally, but the vision of the district around our CIP and the work we're doing, because, Tim mentioned how difficult the job can be. Yeah, it is like that support in keeping myself really focused on moving forward with the responsibilities I have that I've been tasked with, in the district, and keeping that, that focus on that work, keeping the focus on students and a learning environment that supports staff. And it is really nuanced work. It is not boring, that's for sure. And I really feel really fortunate to work in a district where I have that kind of support available. The fact that that other districts maybe don't have that just makes me more glad that I work in a district that does, because I have that ability to access that support, and it's made a big difference. For the school community here. So I just wanted to share that perspective. Thank you.
Thank you, Julianne. Frank, did you?
Yeah, I also want to just speak to the value added. The question's come up a few times. And when we consider, our most important role, which is to address the needs of our kids, we've seen data just recently. Many of the board members were part of the meeting last night. We looked at assessment data. We're going to do that again. One of the most chronic problems across the state and in our system as well is the gap between our learners, our subgroups of learners, our students that are considered in poverty versus those that are not. It's a number one goal in the state to close that gap, and it's a concern nationally. Our history here in our own district, Our largest elementary school many years ago was the 6th lowest performing elementary school in terms of proficiency in the state. The principal mentor that we have today, once taking over that school as being the principal, brought that school within 5 years to one of the top performing schools in the state. It was the highest performing school in Windham Southeast Supervisory Union. And it was one of the highest levels of poverty. So my point is in terms of addressing what really matters to families and children, breaking the cycle of poverty, that's the number one thing that we can do for our young people and then our citizens. We have a principal mentor today that exemplified how to do it over a long period of time. In 2011, the governor came down, the Secretary of Education came down to Academy School to say, how is this possible? What did you do? That was later studied by national researchers that were employed by the state of Vermont through the PICUS study. I mentioned that before. PICUS looked at models and exemplars across the state as to how do we deal with it. The number one issue, which is bringing all of our children up to proficiency in math and science and literacy, but how can we do it at an affordable cost that we can sustain in Vermont? Out of all of the state, once again, the national researchers developed a report, and they looked at 255 Vermont schools, and they picked 5 schools to say, well, who's got this model? And one of them was the Academy School, administered by our principal mentor today. There was a second school as an exemplar that showed, again, closing the gap. One of the most significant gaps is closing the gap between our special education students and our regular students. A remarkable closure of proficiency. So the second school, that second school was Oak Grove. That school was led by Jen McCusick, who was the assistant principal to Andy Patchouli, who is our current principal mentor. So the point is that the person we have in the role has shown remarkable results at the most important level of what we do in public schools, and he's demonstrated that it's transferable knowledge. It's not that he's got the magic, but he's mentored other principals who have gone on, and you just heard from Julianne, who's doing remarkable work as well. And we're just very fortunate to have that resource. Someday Andy is going to retire. Someday we will be looking to do what you're suggesting, Tim. But I just want folks to understand that the value added that Mark has facilitated through retaining this service it's priceless. It's in terms of the impact on children.
I think the comments that we just heard indicate how difficult it is to unravel the issue of the position itself from the individual who actually has the position at this point.
Mm-hmm.
So I just want to say that. But this is as I came into this meeting, that this position has been reduced by 75% in terms of cost is significant. As well, if the cost is reduced, then obviously the impact of this position on the entire district is also reduced. So it's really focused, for the most part, on BUHS. Given the significance of this reduction, do you have a sense of a time frame when this position will not exist at all?
I think, like Tim had quoted me a couple of years ago, I think we should evaluate it every year. I don't think this is the year to reduce that position based on the need at the high school around professional development and learning how to be an administrator. I don't think this is the year. Next year maybe, but I certainly don't think this year is the year. And it's not necessarily a position I would just refill. It is dependent on the person who is filling the position. I think it's really important that we're well aware of the people we hire to train, our teachers, our paras, and our principals.
Jen,
A couple of things. I don't want to take anything away from this principal guidance person, but the most important person in our schools are our teachers. And that's where we need to put our money and our thoughts, because you can have teachers that do nothing, or you can have teachers who are really outstanding teachers. And so I would rather see maybe, and Paul says you can't put this grant towards a teacher, I guess, or you said professional development, you could put it towards a teacher's professional development. I would put my focus more on the teachers.
A competent, skilled administrator. A competent, skilled, innovative administrator. That's what teachers want. They want clear vision, they want guidance, they want clarity, they want training, they want data-based decisions.
I don't know, I know a lot of teachers who are very competent on their own, so you and I will disagree on that. The other thing that I forgot to say in the first time is that I'm glad for your keeping Paul on for a year, because I know what Paul has done and the grants that he's written and everything else, and I know the upheaval in the spot that he was in.
Yeah.
But I don't want to see Paul here for 7 years. He can do some more things in Dummerston. He can volunteer in Dummerston now. But I forgot to say that when you first said you were keeping him.
Deborah.
Yeah, in keeping with the need to streamline and to create a lean budget, there are a lot of educational institutions that follow a model that Jody mentioned, and that is where principal mentors principal. And I know this came up the last time we talked about the principal mentor position. I was not on the SU at the time, but I was watching that meeting. And I know that it was about the drain on, let's say, master principals mentoring a more junior principal. But you could have 2 master principals mentoring a more junior principal. Yes, it increases the workload, but it is incumbent upon us to tighten our budget. And this is very often what happens with teachers who are hired, whether it's a novice coming directly out of college, which is frequently the case, or someone with experience coming from another institution. You always team them up, or at least a lot of institutions team them up with existing, for want of a better word, master teachers who are already in place with that experience to mentor. And I've done that many times. Does it add to one's workload to find that time to meet with someone, to always be ready to engage? Sure, it does. But these are lean times. So I do want to put it out that way.
Thank you.
So I really haven't heard opposition to the motion to evaluate the position, except that the position is different than what the board understood. This kind of underscores the need of the board to have as much information as we can about each line on the budget. So knowing that it's been reduced by 75% and that 75% has been shifted over to Paul's role is the kind of information that we need. So I would still stay with the motion with the understanding that the principal mentor position be evaluated, that you give us a timeline for that. And also that we here, it's a time for Paul to tout the grants so we know which grants that we're getting. this is good information that I think the public and the board would appreciate. So I really don't see any opposition to this motion.
I was gonna ask you to restate it, but I was waiting for everybody to comment.
Any other comments?
Good.
Okay, the motion is to direct the administration to provide the board with a timeline for evaluation of the principal mentor position. Furthermore, this evaluation will include hard data on the number of hours administrators have availed of the position and convincing arguments for and against continuation of the position. That being said, it's understood that that evaluation would also include a list of the grants that we're getting.
Is there any discussion on that motion?
I have a question. What does the listing of grants have to do with this position?
Well, the position is an $80,000 position that now includes not just the 25% of the principal mentor, but Paul's role too. That Paul's role is embedded in this position.
I think I would be more comfortable with this motion if we unraveled it from Paul's position and grants. I'd be more comfortable with the motion, to keep it separate and distinct.
Keep it clean.
So that the motion would be to evaluate the current position of principal mentor, which has been reduced by 75% as of this year. And to hold on to every element of that motion except for the final statement about grants.
Oh, yeah, that was not, okay.
Wait a minute, wait a minute. So
never
then, can I go back to the chair's request that without addendum, you read the motion? I'm sorry, I
No,
just
that's fine.
need to hear it without
Clarity is
addendum.
good.
To direct the administration to provide the board with a timeline for evaluation of the principal mentor position. Furthermore, this evaluation will include hard data on the number of hours administrators have availed of the position and convincing arguments for and against continuation of the position. And that's all my voice will hold.
Is there any further discussion on that motion?
Can I have that for a second?
I was gonna ask him to email it to you, but,
I got most of it. Okay.
all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Was it seconded?
We've been operating this board on
Without
Bob's
seconds.
rules, small
Okay.
boards, because there's only 5 of us. So, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions?
Same,
Thank you. This is not unanimous, so we need to do a roll call vote.
sorry.
That's okay. Carrie Amadon,
Yes.
Tim Bazio.
Aye.
Sean Murphy,
Abstain.
Deborah Stanford,
Yes.
and I abstain because I only vote if there's a tie. So the motion has been carried. Thank you very much. I know it was a long discussion, but
Yep.
it's very clarifying.
It's good discussion.
And Frank, you are on.
Okay,
Here, can I
let's show
just-
some documents, yeah, go ahead, I'll
So can I
start.
just raise a sidebar to the discussion we just had about principal mentor? It might be worthwhile in terms of the budget to also talk about the position of consultants who are varied and throughout the entire system. But I would like to entertain that, to take a look at consultants.
Should we have something available for our next budget meeting on that?
About consultants,
Yeah,
like in this,
like how much we're spending on them, yeah, daily.
And then just to clarify that, how much we're spending, and then in what capacity and where they're working,
Fair enough.
if you don't mind.
Your shoes are
And if I may add, the fees that we're paying for consultants, some get much more than others.
This is the same document you received last time, is that right? Is it the same?
It's,
Yeah.
I'm going down to
Yeah.
Brooks High School. I think we need the state representatives.
Who's that? Good night.
all right.
Thank you. Several of them are not going to be
So when we get up to the
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm gonna look to break time.
They say they will.
Yes, okay.
And then, or, yes.
Bye, Kim.
You want me to open it up?
Open it up.
How great. We'll need poetry. Well, it's on both sides, like me, we use it.
Thank you. Thank you, Paul. Excellent, presented. Following around, thank
This is a dreaded UCLA.
Oh, it's Frank's favorite thing.
Watch out.
You have this like framed at home.
Okay. It fortunately hasn't changed much, so,
I swear it's getting longer.
there are always more to share there. This is still the two-page version of about a 50-page, document.
Thank you.
I think we should just quiz him at times. 5310, what is it?
I bet he knows.
I bet
Okay, so for our budget review, a little bit of a framework, what we thought would be informative, useful, and hopefully engaging. Remember on our timeline tonight is our admin instruction and our grant programs. So that's the budget topic, which is those are 2 of 4 segments of the Windham Southeast Supervisory Union budget that we develop and review. And traditionally, once we go through that, which is this evening, we're scheduled for December 4th for the special education proposal. And then December 11, food service, hopefully we'll have the information so that we can develop our revenue outlook. We need information from the state of Vermont to complete that work. And then our calendar again on the website calls for a supervisory union board vote, the budget on December 18th. So tonight we thought we would start with the budget development rationale for anyone that joined our meeting last evening with our Windham Southeast School District Board. This was part of our presentation of the elementary first draft proposal for our schools in the Windham Southeast School District.
And just so folks know, this is a sneak peek to Tuesday night's presentation as well.
Right.
Is it this one you're talking about?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So as always, the purpose of our budgets are to create educational opportunity, meet our student needs where they are, and assure student growth over their career with us in our pre-K through 12 school systems. And of course, that is driven by our goals. So this document that you have that is a series of slides, the title is Key Indicators for the Fiscal Year 26 Budget Development Rationale, is very much the focus of at every level, at the classroom level, at the administrative level, at the central office level.
Do you want me to try and track you, put it up for the Zoom?
That would be great.
Okay.
Can you?
Do you need
give me-
sharing?
Yeah, it
Alright,
is,
so you can do
you
faster.
you know that
Okay,
one is on the
okay,
website.
okay.
Oh, that's great.
Oh, I think I found it. See if you're in, Paul.
Yours should be in,
I
Paul.
can do it, yeah.
So, this, as I said, is an excerpt from, what was presented, last evening, so, it was page 8 of a much larger document, so, that, first page 8, you see, with the title, our page 9 identifies the key goals that, between, community engagement, board engagement, discussion at board meetings throughout the year, student assessment, guidance from the State Board of Education and the Agency of Education. The board agreed on these goals, these 4 goals, to drive our, really our staffing, our professional development, and our commitment to supporting our students. So you see the 4 goals there, 10% more proficient in literacy, while decreasing the achievement gap. 10% more proficiency in math. Again, decreasing the achievement gap between our lower socioeconomic students and the rest of our student population. By June 2026, we expect the graduation rate will improve and exceed the state average. And regarding students' sense of belonging and climate indicators, we're looking for a 10% improvement in those outcomes. Mark, would you like to sort of highlight some of our results and why we want to continue?
Yeah. So the next couple of slides show proficiency around ELA, English language. You can see this first slide comparison from 2023 to 2024, and we do see some overall increases in achievement rates from the 23 school year to last school year. The next slide, which I think slide I'd really like to highlight, is how we perform in comparison with the state. And as you can see from those bar graphs, we perform higher. Our achievement levels are higher than the state average in ELA proficiency. And as you can see off to the right there in bold print, what's interesting to compare is that the percentage of students in historically marginalized subgroups is about 20% higher in our school district versus the state average. So when you compare those results in terms of outperforming the state, and then with the percentages of marginalized subgroups, we're doing really well. We want to do better, but I think we're doing really well in that area. Jody?
I just ask a question. Are the 50 and 48, is that 50% and 48%?
Yes.
So we're basically comparing ourselves to the state who's under 50% or whatever. We're not trying to get up where we really should be.
No, we are. This is just,
What would you think we really should be?
well, we're aiming for 10% increase
Yeah,
for this school year.
okay,
Based
rather
on
than
last year's
trying to
results.
reach for 80 or
We
90.
want 100%. But we set a goal for 10% increase in achievement.
It seems to me very cheap at this thing. It doesn't sound very good to me, but go ahead, thank you.
Again, we're surpassing the state average.
That's
Okay,
very good.
You can see a comparison from school to school. And again, our percentages of marginalized groups at our various schools differ based on the town. And then again, the next slide shows a comparison of achievement rates with economic disadvantaged students. And then you can see the comparison between students on IEPs. So obviously, those are areas that we are targeting as we build our systems like MLSS and EST. At our last meeting, we did a presentation around Act 173 and how those changes to the law have increased our ability to, for special ed teachers to work with all students and enhance our MLSS systems. This next slide, I think is,
You want this one, Paul?
yeah. What I like about this slide is it shows a story, a progression throughout a single school year using our own assessment system. And you can see from the fall to the spring, there's marked improvement in terms of achievement. And what I'd really like to point out is the difference from the red from the winter to the spring. So you can see how when the system is in place and running, we are getting results. And we are seeing that in real time as we conduct our data meetings, our team meetings, and so forth. So this is data that we look at throughout the school year in our educational teams on a weekly basis.
Can you, on this slide right now, can you just step me through this a little bit, where it's level 1, level 2, or how am I supposed to read, for example, level 4? Does that mean that it's simply of grave concern, level 4?
So level 3 and level 4 are proficient. Level 4 is proficient with distinction. So you can see on the fall of 23, 47% proficient. That's combining the blue and the green.
The comparison is with national norm pool benchmarks. So that the students in the green and blue are well above the 50th percentile. Actually, the cut point is a little bit lower than the 50th percentile national norm pool. So the blue and the green are students who are performing at higher levels than the red and the yellow.
And what's exciting to see is the reduction in the red and then the growth in the blue and the green in the spring. So it speaks to the system having a positive effect on outcomes. And we obviously want to increase that by continuing to invest in our systems.
Yeah, ideally, you want it all to be green and blue,
For sure.
and we're moving towards that.
Yeah.
And that's, I have to say, what another board member and I talked about last night, this is really the best presentation of data that we've had in years. This is really well presented there.
That's because Brent's doing it rather than me.
No.
Terribly true. She's got a much better sense of how to do this presentation.
We stand on the shoulders of giants.
I would like to mention though that it's very much, in fairness to Paul, also a reflection of what the board has approved in terms of the current restructuring of our curriculum assessment office. It's amazing how many roles Paul has filled. And unfortunately, this level of data development, presentation, analysis, he was, I'm sure, doing it, but the ability to have the time to codify it and create a public document like this didn't really exist in our old structure. where Paul basically was the curriculum coordinator, as well as the Consolidated Federal Grant Program Administrator, as well as overseeing the homeless program, the pre-K program. The list goes on forever. And the system needed that investment to go to another level. And it is happening, as Mark has just pointed out. The progress that we're seeing in student performance and the narrowing of the gap it's a direct result of this more professional, higher level functioning structure that we've created. And it's very exciting. It's why we're really supportive of the budget that we're presenting, because it makes this happen.
Yeah, and things that we continue to work on to support the development of our systems are professional development and in-service days, grade level meetings, data benchmark meetings, progress monitoring meetings. We've invested in a peer observation model within our schools. We will be sending teachers to other schools within the district very shortly. So that's exciting. There is a plan for some middle school teachers to visit an elementary classroom in the coming weeks. So we're starting to break down those barriers in terms of teachers supporting each other systematically and outside of the walls of the school they work in. Other things that we've done are learning walks, which is a group of professionals observing lessons and then coming together and discussing and reflecting on what was seen. And of course, coaching cycles. As you know, we have invested in instructional coaches, and we're seeing that model pay off here. As we move to some of the math results, not as inspiring in terms of how we compare to the state averages. We're in the ballpark with the state, but we want to be performing above the state average. That is definitely the goal. If we hit our mark with 10%, we will likely be there as a whole. As you know, we've invested in new curriculum. IM has been implemented at various rates across our schools the past 3 years. This school year is the first year where the expectation is 100% implementation at all of our schools. So that is exciting to see that we have consistent implementation of curriculum at all of our schools in the school district, K through 8. I was in a principal's meeting this morning. Principal was sharing that his daughter had a birthday celebration over the weekend, and she had friends from all different schools within our system at the birthday party. And on the peripheral, he was listening in, and they were literally talking about the common curriculum across our schools in the school district. And he shared that story, and I just thought that's powerful. That's really cool. We couldn't have said that 2 years ago, and certainly not 5 or 10 years ago. So I thought that was an exciting story to share. So again, yeah, you'll see with the math proficiency rates at some grade levels, we're right there with the state. Others were a little further behind, but as a whole, we're close to the state average. You look at individual schools, clearly there's a range there. As I mentioned earlier, there's a range of need at every school in terms of marginalized groups and percentages. So certainly Bracktown has a higher percentage of free and reduced students. Mary Kaufman is going to help with this presentation on Tuesday night, and I know she'll speak specifically to Oak Grove in terms of that percentage rate. That is a very clear goal for her in that school this school year. That's what they've been working very hard to increase that percentage rate this school year, as it is reflected in most of their staff meetings and team meetings. So again, we'll hear from a principal next week in their perspective on these results.
That school, in addition, had the lowest proficiency rate for ELA as well.
Yeah.
I mean, lowest, by 1
Right.
point
Yeah.
away from others, but
And it's the highest impoverished school in our school
is it,
district.
growth?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay,
And Green Street's just behind.
got it.
Again, some other ways to look at the math data, similar comparison to the ELA data in terms of the differences in achievement. Again, Tate Erickson will be presenting with us next Tuesday night, and I'm sure he will speak to the work being done in the special ed department. Lastly, we come to a slide around the climate survey results, and you can see kind of the pattern from the spring of 2021. We first started giving panorama to the fall of this school year.
I have a question about that.
Yeah.
I know Brenna's out, I know Paul is working on grants and everything, but we also know that the schools have received the full panorama reports.
Yeah.
Could those reports be sent to the board too?
Yeah, I know last week Bryn sent those reports out to school principals to start working with school teams and analyzing. So I would say in the near future, for sure.
Yeah, just the same reports that the principals get.
And then again, the next slide, you can see school-to-school comparisons in terms of the 3 different categories of questions. The one we're tracking is sense of belonging this year, and looking for 10% growth in that area. And the last slide I think is really compelling. That first box indicates the number of students in Vermont in education programs and the trend over time. And I think this relates back to our first conversation this evening. In 2000, over 500 people in education programs. We're now in 2022 under 300. That's a drastic change over time. And then in comparison, in 2017, you can see the number of students, teachers on provisional or emergency licenses compared to in 2024, the number of teachers on emergency or provisional licenses. That's more than double. And that is reflected in our school district. So it speaks to the importance of professional development, training, coaching, monitoring, assisting with getting your license, and investing in our people. Grow our own program certainly reflects the need to continue to support our staff. We currently have about 10 paraeducators in teacher programs through the Grow Our Own initiative. So that's very exciting. But again, you can see these are, double the amount of emergency licenses means we have teachers with temporary licenses who have not been through education programs. So you can imagine the burden that places on schools to provide professional development and support in getting these folks through programs to get their licenses. So I think these 2 graphs really tell a story about education in Vermont. We talked about lack of candidates in hiring pools. This reflects that. And I think it speaks to the real importance of training our folks and providing as much support as we can so they can continue to be successful teachers and stay in the career. My daughter's going into an education program next year. And I told her, well, you'll have a job where you want to go. So.
You may not make enough to live on, but you'll have a job.
You'll get a job.
I mean, that's the state of how educators are either respected or perhaps not respected.
But we're very aware, and we see this in our school system, and we are being as proactive as possible to support and provide PD for our employees, both at the teaching level, paraeducator level, and principal level.
So, question, this first graph in this last page.
Yep.
When it says traditional teaching prep programs, are we talking about undergrad programs, essentially?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We presume undergrad and the one-year master's programs that are add-ons. Like Keene State has a one-year licensing program on top of as a master's on top of their undergrad.
Upper Valley Institute has something similar, I believe.
So this first graph, I know you just said it, I just want to cement it in my head. As of 2022, there are under 300 individuals in the entire state of Vermont
Yep.
who are going for
Teacher prep.
programs.
Yep.
Or rather, who completed teacher, that's 22, so completed teacher prep program.
Right.
And then the other graph, the increase in emergency and provisional licenses.
Yeah.
Those are folks who have a license who haven't completed a program. And they have 2 years to complete a program to keep their license. And if they don't,
They're dropped.
they're done.
Right.
So
So,
that's why the request for the extra support at central office, a couple weeks back, there is a connection to this data. And the overwhelming amount of work that needs to be done in the licensing process and supporting staff members.
So just in relationship to what you just said, I seem to recall that there is a program that exists in the district to foster, to support those individuals with provisional or emergency licenses in the district itself, to sort of help them with obtaining.
The process basically comes through my office, and then we identify mentors to help support folks get through the process, but requires many reminders, many check-ins that basically come from Mohart. And ultimately, she works directly with all of these folks who are in that process of relicensure.
Sean?
Yeah, I was just wondering we're just talking about the 300. Do you think that illustrates the complexity and the difficulty that have been created by society in order to successfully run a school system?
Say that again.
Well, I've talked to teachers, and they do say things are it's a difficult job. They love their jobs, but it's a very difficult job, and it's a very difficult job because of actually a change in some of the behaviors and a change in all kinds of things, not in a positive way. So, if somebody's saying, well, I want to go do this for a living, you'd have to really love the idea of being a teacher, and to put up with, to try to alleviate problems that do exist. So it just makes me, even more respectful of the 300 people that do it, they're probably focused on, you know, making things better.
Yeah.
Um,
It's a difficult profession.
I mean, just like
a
my son,
rewarding
who
profession.
graduated from this school and then went to UVM, and he, right from day one, he wanted to do something to try to alleviate the problem of climate change. So now he works for an international PV company doing creation of engineering, air engineering creation. So, you know, that sort of translates a little bit to people who want to go into education. They have a desire to, you know, to do something, you know, good works,
Yeah.
I guess you could say.
And we have an early childhood program here at the Career Center that lots of kids take, which is a pathway towards the career of education. We have a program, a mentorship program, where kids at the high school spend time in elementary schools working with children. That's another pathway. But we need to look for more, because it's obviously public education is incredibly important.
How formalized is your grow our own program?
It's formal.
Is
Yeah,
it?
we have a very formal process, application process.
Yeah.
At this point, we have 5 folks each year that we sponsor in the program. So 5 last year, 5 this year, next year 5 more. So potentially have 15 people in a program next year, and some graduating. So I'm really excited about it. We have paraeducators who have been paras for over 20 years, who will now be graduating a teacher prep program next December, who we will hire as teachers, like, immediately. So.
Yeah, Rachel Glickman's research was so exciting to see. First, she identifies how the profession has changed, how teachers are burdened with so much more than simply teaching. But what's so promising in her research is the promise of community schools that takes away a lot of stuff on the teacher's shoulders and just lets them do what they're trained to do, to teach. And so that's going to be really exciting to see what happens with that community schools grant.
Well, that's why we hired social workers over the years too, to make those community connections for families. That was a big part of promoting those positions in our schools.
There's been a hand up on Zoom that's been very patient. Hello?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
I will, one second, let me. I realize that this is not necessarily the time for public comment, but I'm a teacher and I feel the need to comment. So 2 things. One, I want to say, remember these numbers about teachers and what it takes to hire a teacher and find teachers and find credentialed teachers when you go into negotiations. This is a contract year for teachers, and teachers are taxpayers too. So we know quite well the burden of public schools on taxpayers, and it's a really, really challenging and complicated situation. However, the teacher contract and what the outcome of that is, it makes a tremendous difference in terms of the quality and kind of people that want to work in our district. So that's one. And then 2, the Grow Your Own is fantastic. There are so many things that the district is doing that are wonderful. And we have to realize, and someone said it, I think it was Tim, schools are providing very, very, very different kinds of services than we have in the past. And in my time as a teacher, our roles have shifted really significantly, and it impacts our budget. yes, during COVID, there were funds to meet all of these other needs, or at least some of the other needs of the students who come to us. But if the expectation is that schools continue and need to, because we have students who need to provide, food, social services, social emotional, we're becoming the place where students get all of their needs met, which may or may, which isn't necessarily not appropriate because we're the ones who see them every day and care about them and end up delivering. But the reality is there are financial implications of that. So what gets really, really hard to tease out is what are the priorities? And if schools don't provide these things, where are kids going to get them? Because in the past, society was different. So, again, my two major points, and I understand this may not be the time for public comment, but I'm a teacher, is one, as you go into contract negotiations with teachers, look at the data around the kind of, certified teachers who are in the field and how you attract them. And two, thinking about budgeting, if schools aren't going to provide all of these other things, where are they going to come from? And this isn't a judgment about whether they should or should not be provided by schools, but the reality is, as a teacher, that's what we're confronted with every day, is how do we have students who are able and ready to learn because all of these other needs, their basic needs on Maslow's hierarchy, are being met. So, thank you.
Thank you. Jody?
Well, first of all, I agree with that caller. I don't know who she is, but she's probably a very good teacher. But before we can do anything about being a community school or any of those things, we have to convince the legislature that if they're going to put all of these things into the school budgets, into the education fund, they're going to have to pay for them. They belong in the general fund. They do not belong in the education fund. And so the more people who contact their legislators about this, the better off we are, because the schools are the perfect place to do a lot of these emotional, these social, the foods, the shots, everything else. The other thing was a quick question for Mark. You used the phrase free and reduced. Is that still being used in any way? Because everybody's got universal meals, don't they?
They do.
So how are you still using the free? Because I got into a discussion with a friend the other day and said, there's no longer any free and reduced. And so am I wrong to say that?
We use the direct, maybe Paul should speak to this.
It's been sort of detailed a little bit more. Because there's universal meals, most years, the schools would put out a household income form rather than a free and reduced lunch application. There end up being periodically benchmark years where those applications may go out. But right now, one of the sources of information for poverty level is the household income form. However, much of the data that we get on on household income or household status with respect to poverty is through things like direct certification through SNAP, RUFA, all of those, Medicaid, all of those other programs. Medicaid is the new data source that we've sort of recently got. So now it's not free and reduced yes or no. I mean, it's sort of free and reduced yes or no, where free and reduced is really a substitute phrase for different ways of qualifying for being low income.
I just don't want to use the wrong words when I'm talking to people. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
I think we can move on to the next step, Frank.
Alrighty, so as Mark articulated, very much what drives our budgeting, our staffing, and we've got reason to sort of celebrate some good success, but certainly reason to continue the investment. So if we look at the two financial page documents, there's a thicker one and a thinner one. Normally we start with the thinner one, which is the supportive instruction administration at the central office. The thicker document is the grant-funded programs. We like to present both of these in the same meeting because some of the grant funds are designed to support central office functions, so we can make those connections. So I'll do a quick review of the proposal. Maybe also, we don't have to do this now, but if you're interested and you want to look at the uniform chart of account number descriptions, it's a way for you, if you're interested in some of the detail, to interpret those account codes. That is part of the state of Vermont's requirement that all public schools, supervisory unions use these codes as they collect and report public information on our financial condition. What we're looking at here is several functions, and Paul, I do have this on the website.
Yep, I've got it up. This is the thin one, right?
Yeah, this is the title, FY26 Admin and Instruction.
I think that's the one I've got up.
Yeah, I think, yeah, I see it, yeah. The first page is, will be developed once we get our enrollment data from the state. I would hope that will come back to us. We send it up and then they apply weights and so on and send it back to us. We usually get that in early December. And once we have that, we can develop our revenue assumptions. Of course, revenue is also driven by expenditures, so we have to define that first. Page 1 shows the pre-K coordinator position that is overseeing the Canal Street School new program that is being developed as a public pre-K program. But it's also a position that's been in place for many, many years, where there's liaison between our public school pre-K providers, our private school partners. It's all part of Act 166, requires public schools to fund the private pre-K applicants. Paul has been very involved in helping with the administration of that, and he's handing it over to a new coordinator that will be carrying on that work. Very important work. Obviously, the more we can be effective at the pre-K level, the better our chances are of success in schools. Overall, if you look at page 2, you see
Can we stay on page 1 for a second? Can I just ask, so this pre-K coordinator, am I reading this correctly, that the salary has gone up almost 17K?
Yeah, and I wanted to point that out. So on page 2, when you look at the program total for the pre-K coordinator, overall the proposal is actually lower by $1,000. You see that fiscal year 25 amended budget $72,075, proposed is $71,000. There is an increase in the full-time equivalent from an 80% position to full-time because of the new Canal Street program that's coming online and the oversight required for that. But the person we have in the position, as you see, is not accessing health insurance. So overall, there is actually a reduction in that program. Did that address your question, Deborah?
I'm really not sure. I'm still looking at page 1, which
Yep.
maybe I shouldn't be looking at all.
Well, page 1, as I mentioned, the first number of counts are the assessments, their revenues that won't be defined until after we have our.
So I'm looking at expenses at the
And
bottom of
then-
the page.
Yep, right there in the middle of the page, yep.
And so again, that position has gone up 16, almost 17K.
Yeah, that's going from 80% position to full-time.
Got it, okay.
Just a quick question. The health insurance lines, are you going on the assumption of a 11% increase?
11.9. Curriculum assessment there on page 2. So this is reflective of our team that you have heard from several times. And we will make a relationship to additional grant-funded curriculum assessment positions. Paul will assist with that as we go through, but you can see we're sustaining the structure that was created in fiscal year 25, the current year, where we have a director and then 2 curriculum coordinators for that department. And again, that's directly related to the information and the progress, the assessment that we are seeing with our students. So overall, that group, when you go through the salary and benefits, and that's basically what most of the central office are, because we don't operate buildings. You see on page 3, a very level-funded investment there. Total budget up 1.7%. Bottom of page 3, so important that our technology systems work. As you know, our email, our archive of data, the functionality of our student information systems, the Power School, all of the data transfer that must happen in order for us to fund our public schools with the Agency of Ed. It's like so many other folks that we've already heard from, it is so much more complex than it ever has been. We have an excellent director of technology, Gary Parzich, who's a very effective IT professional, and he is fortunately going to be with us next year as well. You see on page 4, again, a pretty level-funded budget.
Another question. Okay, going back to page 3.
Mm-hmm.
When you go to instruction and curriculum development, and I look at, for FY26, 353K, that's for 3 individuals, is that correct?
For 1.6 individuals. You'll note the FTEs up in the, is that the FTEs? No, that's
Yeah.
percent change. What is the FTEs? That's,
We don't.
Where are you? Wait a minute.
We don't have the FTEs.
the FTEs aren't in there, sorry. That's most of the 2 curriculum coordinators, elementary and secondary. Some of the secondary curriculum coordinator is funded through federal grants.
So the 286K is not for the entire department?
Correct.
Yeah, and that's why we like to have the grant budget also part of the presentation. So you do get the where there is shared funding for shared effort. We like to make sure that we have a discussion about all of the pieces of that.
And you said it's for how many people?
Essentially 2 people.
2 people, okay.
Where's the director's position?
Director is federally funded, grant funded. Some of the like the general supplies and tech related, that's for the entire department or for the entire curriculum office rentals, but the salaries really represent those two curriculum coordinators. Oh, and the admin assistant.
And the what?
The admin assistant. We have a part of some of our admin assistant works for both the curriculum office and the business office. That's Tracy.
Okay.
And, the system went offline here, but
In your full budget, are these broken down into number of people, or is this what it's going to be?
Pardon?
Under what Deborah was just talking about. You, first of all, you said it was one director and two coordinators. Then it's changed to essentially two people. And then the director is grant funded, and then you put some of the administrative assistants. In your full budget, when you finish, do you explain in that how many people are there
yeah, in the whole department, yeah.
in the
Yeah.
whole budget?
So as Paul has said, that line item, 182,000 in the salary, that is for two people. That is not the whole department. And then there's another line item, 23,000 for the assistant. That's what we just discussed.
Okay,
And yes, when we're finished with the overview, we'll have the whole department. But the Consolidated Federal Program grant is specifically set up to support the oversight of curriculum assessment. And it is a major effort in terms of assessing all of our children and then reporting data and providing curriculum, looking at research-based tools and then organizing all the professional development that goes with that. All those things that you've heard Paul and the group present over the years.
I'm just thinking, you know, I'm familiar with budgeting and the board is, but the public isn't familiar with it. So when they get to reading something, the clearer that it is as to how many people or if this is grant funded, you know, with stars, or I don't know, I know you've got a statewide program that you're working with, but it would be so much nicer if the public could understand a lot more of it than they do. And that's why I was asking those questions.
Yeah, while we're talking about full-time equivalent, there was another, did this one go out, Paul? Maybe it's the single sheet, the top line is WSESU FTE admin supportive instruction. Did that go out to everybody?
That was in last month's package, I think.
That was the different budget, but
Oh, okay.
yeah, there is another data sheet that, it isn't at the level of detail that, Jody, you may be interested in, but it does provide that overview. We usually don't do a comprehensive overview until we have all components of the budget out, so that you are looking at the whole organization, which would include special education.
Just if you have meetings with the public, it just clearly can say, these are 3 people and 60% of it is grant funded. Makes it so much more understandable about the costs.
Sure, yeah.
And I hope you are going to have some meetings with the public. Of course, they won't be there probably till the end, but
Okay, thank you. So we were looking at technology, and that is one person in that department. Going on to page 4, the diversity, equity, we have 2 people in that department, and you see that budget is also essentially it's a level funded proposal. Looking at page 5, you see the subtotal for the department. Michaela Sims has indicated that the effort that's gone forward over the last several years, and especially now that we've consolidated all of the budgeting into one entity, for quite a while it was in two entities, has enabled her to administer the budget and those initiatives pretty effectively. So, for example, because it is a relatively new program, page 5, you see there, top of the page, the more of the programmatic investments, professional educational services. These are workshops and presenters that at this $28,000 actual and then the $30,000 sustained. Diversity, equity, transportation, so those are those field trips, and then general supplies. You can see that the big change over the years is adding an additional position that occurred in fiscal year 25. That's why the total in 24 is less than fiscal year 25. The school board, you can see most of the school board expenses are at the district level, not at the SU level, but there is a little bit of school board expense. Page 5 in the middle, we have the superintendent's office. Here you see that there is an increase that the board reviewed. I think it was at the last supervisory union meeting, looking at the many things that are being added to public ed and specifically superintendent's office. And as Mark just was articulating, the number of staff that need support to navigate through the endorsement requirement to get a teacher license it's just an enormous amount of work in itself. But that, in addition to so many other data collections and compliance requirements, and then the need to upgrade systems that help us be efficient and accurate. That is what prompted there's a half-time position added to the secretary and office assistant line. That's what moved that salary, second line under superintendent's office, up more than a typical rate change.
So that's 2 individuals.
That is 1.5.
1.5.
The other half is in the HR support, and that's, as you probably recall, the job description supports both the executive office and the HR functions.
But that that half position that's divided between the 2 departments, that's all embedded in this line.
Half that salary, so 1.5 positions for what you see there on page 5, and then you'll see the other.
The other half, so this is only 1.5.
That's
okay.
right.
Okay.
And then moving through page 6, generally you see as you glance down the difference column either a reduction in spending of the proposal or flat line, but discretionary spending has been either reduced or held at no change. So that's superintendent's budget is very much supplies, materials. There is the office rent in there. And then of course the important communication, advertising, and so it is also where the VSBA dues are. On that bottom line, just above the total, on page 6. Page 7 is the HR and the business office. So here you see the other half of that position, Deborah. So on page 7, the second line down, HR director and benefits coordinator, that is where the other half of the additional position that we discussed at the last board meeting goes. And again, that is to support the tremendous increase in the amount of work that has been assigned to our central office and HR department as a result of many different initiatives, Title IX reviews, the changes in the salary schedule based on the academic completion of coursework, and then there's a great deal of reporting that's required.
Where do we see legal fees?
Legal fees are back up on, now this would be for the supervisory union, not specifically to an individual district, is on page 6, and that's under professional services. And that is, we've actually reduced that budget a little bit.
So legal fees are coupled into professional services?
Yes.
Okay.
But where's the bulk of the expenses we've really basically cut out from last year?
That's in the supervisory, the Windham Southeast School District budget.
Oh.
Yeah, remember, this is a totally separate entity. As we had discussed at the board meeting where we talked about the additional administrative support, on page 7, you see the third line down shows actually a reduction in payroll, and this is for the core operations of all districts, Vernon, Windham Southeast School District, and the Supervisory Union. This is where you have our payroll processing, accounts payable processing, all of our grants administration, all of our compliance reporting, audit interface, all the work we do with the IRS and all of our oversight agencies. I had mentioned there was an offset to the additional FTE. Remember we talked about we needed to assign more support to the food service administration. So that came out of that line item. And that was the offset that we had talked about to the additional administrative support. And that we'll talk more about when we get to the food service budget and in a week or two. So there's the operations, and of course this page 7 is folks that I work directly with. So I have to say how fortunate we are to have such a dedicated group. I don't know to what extent you may or may not have just said hello to Joni in the first floor, or Jody, or Cindy, or Mary Lou. We have such a terrific team of dedicated folks, and just like all families, they've gone through amazing hardships, cancer and death in the family, and yet this operation is every other week is a payroll, every week is accounts payable. It's a cycle that never ends, and this group of people have never missed a target. And our audits continue to reflect the gold standard in terms of reporting, compliance with generally accepted accounting principles, it's just a really remarkable group of people, and I have the greatest respect for them. So just can't go by without acknowledging a really great group of people that make this district run. Facilities director, you may recall a few years ago, state legislature required all supervisory unions to have a facility director. We're really pleased to have Robert Clark having been appointed to that. He's still very active in the role, doing a great job assisting with capital planning, project oversight, works very closely with me on a daily basis to keep our buildings safe and healthy.
Excuse me, Frank,
Mhm.
is he the head of all the other facility directors?
We've kept the model where the principal still supervises the custodians and facility managers, but he's absolutely integral to any kind of planning, problem solving, and then he does most of the project management. He works through the specifications for major, roofing replacements and HVAC replacements and so on. So, he's very knowledgeable about systems and very current.
Thank you.
Transportation is in this budget, but it's not a completed proposal. I think it's a reasonable estimate that I've put in here. I do have the electric bus grant application still in play. I think I reported that the EPA actually awarded Vernon 3 buses, but we couldn't. They didn't award the SD, and we are a supervisory union transportation system, and the depot has to be able to charge an electric bus, and it just wouldn't work without having a cohesive system. So we understand that we have retained the Vernon award for 3 buses, and I'm pursuing the 15 other buses application.
We'll sell them to you for a price.
Okay. But I do hope that we get that award. I'd very much like to move forward with that. It will require a capital investment, which Vernon probably doesn't want to make on their own.
I have 2 Tesla Powerwalls in my garage.
Yeah, it might not quite cover it. But I'll keep you posted on that.
So the 1.5 million
Yes.
comprises what?
That's to get all of our 2,500 kids to and from school every day.
Having nothing to do with electric buses.
At this point, they're pretty modern, fuel-efficient diesel engines, but they're the conventional
Okay.
combustion engine, and we'd love to get away from that.
Does that include, sorry.
I was kind of wondering about that 1.5 million. It doesn't really show the revenue stream that comes in, which I think is substantial.
That's right, yeah, I will have the revenue assumptions up back on page 1. You're right, Sean, on page 1, if you look at the 4th line down, there's your 644,000 that, we take that 1.5 million and then we reduce the SU cost, and that's the net amount that gets assessed to Vernon, and
So it's actually below $1 million.
it is, yeah.
That was, that came up a long time ago about the idea of truncating the bus service, but that's when VY was still in operation. So, and then somebody, they said, let's get rid of the bus, we'll save a lot of money. And then come to find out, it doesn't really, hardly saved anything at that point in time.
That's right, because
the revenue stream would go away.
Yes.
So,
the
and then you
state,
still have to get the kids to school, so.
right,
And
state
you needed facility to evacuate students in case of a problem at VY.
that's right, yeah. Okay, and then our last group, supportive instruction. This is where our English language learner team is. So page 9, and as you know, we've increased this investment substantially over the last 3 years because of the resettlement initiative that Brattleboro has been fortunate to be able to host. And you know, Mark and I and Paul, all of us hear a lot about how welcome and how beneficial it is to have cross-cultural experiences for all of our children. But obviously it takes a lot of effort and personnel to bring those children that do not speak English into the classroom so that they can be successful. So that is what that represents. You see the fairly significant increase from 24 to 25. If you went back a couple more years, you would see that's changed a lot in the last 6 years.
How many people in this group?
I believe is it 5, Paul? I think it's 5. I can tell you that pretty easily. Program 41.
Jen, yeah. Ray, Olivia, Ori, Maria, and I think it's
6.5.
6, like 6.
Is somebody? Oh yeah, 6.7. Mm-hmm.
It's 7?
6 and 3/4.
6 and 3/4.
Yeah.
And that's 577,000.
That's right. And you may recall the state in their major overhaul of the school funding formula assigned a specific weight for the student who's the English language learner. So theoretically, when that gets pushed into our total student count, it creates tax capacity to pay for this investment. So that's our the admin and supportive instruction and various operational services.
Can I ask a random question?
Sure.
The childcare tax.
Yes.
Why am I not seeing it in FY25? And are we sharing with employees or are we picking it up for all?
So that was a tax imposed after we passed fiscal year 25, right?
So-
It came in.
Okay,
Yeah,
but we're gonna have
paying
it, okay.
But
So at some point, we're gonna see what that is for.
for it's in 26 based on the law. 25, yeah, they passed that before.
Before we did,
I mean after we did our budgets. So that is one of those unfunded mandates.
Okay,
But it's the law.
yeah,
As far as sharing, cost sharing, that needs to be part of the negotiated agreement.
okay, so right now we're picking it up.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any other questions before we move on to the grant budget?
We need 5 minutes.
Sure,
We're gonna take 5 minutes, everybody.
I need 5 minutes.
We are back at 7:06.
Okay, to resume, the grant program budgets. I'm gonna be very brief, and then I am gonna hand it over to Paul, who is our consolidated federal program administrator, and he is transitioning that very important responsibility to the new team over the course of the year, and it is well on the way, I know. So what we're looking at, if we flip to the back of this 30-page document, is the proposal for fiscal year 26. You see that column there, $3,254,000. It is down 1.3 million. We'll go through what that is, and as you know, we're completely past the ESSER period, and that accounts for much of it. Of course, we miss those funds, but we will carry on with the work. And I'll mention that this FTE document that I passed out a little earlier kind of correlates with that reduction in funding. When a grant is not available, we have to reduce the program activity that goes with it, and so we'll go over that. The first 4 pages are going to be the revenue assumptions that we will refine once again as we get through the strategy and the application process with the Agency of Education. But first, as always, we have to define our vision for providing and supporting public ed. And so page 5 is where our expenses start. Then I would turn it over to Paul. Most of these grants, Paul administers. Some of them, Paul, you can pass on if you're not familiar, and I'll address them, but I know all the major ones you're familiar with.
Sure, so grants start on that page 2.
The page 5 on this hand now.
Am I on the
The-
wrong
the
place?
ex-
Oh, sorry, those are all the revenues, sorry,
Yeah,
let me get there.
Yeah.
Expenses on page 5. Smaller grants, UBM, 4H, I don't have a lot of information.
Yeah, that's a new grant that one of our social workers has initiated to help high school kids have an apprentice opportunity with our food providers. So it's kind of a co-op opportunity at the high school. The grant funds a coordinator to bring students to these programs, understand food production, and possibly an interest in a career in agriculture or food production, logistics, and so on.
So next one down, home to school liaison salary, that has gone away. That's been zeroed out for FY26. The SAP Student Assistance Professional Grants, that's a grant we get every year for our 2 student assistance professionals, Ricky Davidson in the high school and Lauren Petrie at the middle school. And that supports some of their salary.
I'm lost, Paul.
So I am at the bottom of page 6.
Paul called it home to school liaison, you're gonna see Afghan refugee
Right.
school impact, so
Ooh,
So,
that's what's the
Am I in the
difference.
wrong?
No, you're in the right place, you just called it home to school, which is the first line.
Yeah, I pulled it up the right section.
Yeah.
oh, I see, okay.
But you have to look underneath,
But you are in the right.
so that's the one that went away, yeah, you're in the right
See what
place.
they've done.
Oh, there's a heading there.
They've
Yeah.
added some things.
Okay.
Right.
That's okay, you're in the right place.
Okay, so continuing on, first big grant is Title I. And we can, one of the pieces that we've included starting in FY24 was moving some funds to Vernon, because Vernon now qualifies to be participate in Title I school-wide programs. And so you'll see we've continued that over through FY26. There are a few changes, but the bottom line for Title I is down on the middle of page 9, essentially 2.13% change from FY25 to 26. Most of the categories, most of the funding is staying the same across those 2 years.
so as a result of Title I, Vernon is only receiving $2,000.
No, there's
No.
also a line
There's
that we have to break it out because of a requirement that schools have a parent-family, that some of the Title I money be allocated to each school-wide school as a parent-family engagement sort of budget, which is a small amount of money, in this case $2,000 to Vernon. There should also be a sub-grant to Vernon.
Got it, 18,000.
Right. No, that's the SD, that's
That's
also for
SD,
that
sorry.
family engagement. The sub-grants are likely further down or
Yeah, they're in the,
maybe down
100, yeah.
at the bottom.
Yeah.
Sub-grant, yeah, they're on the middle of page 10. Sub-grant to Vernon school-wide program, sub-grant to WSESD school-wide program. And you'll see the lion's share of the funding for Title I goes in a grant to the two, between those two sub-grants. That's for the academic support positions that we funded at the Title I schools, school-wide schools. Sean?
Could I just add, this is kind of a non sequitur, but I think it'd be really good for the admin to give an overview of the criteria that would make up Title I. Probably all those titles. Just, a simple explanation, okay? We don't have to do it tonight.
It'll take me 2 seconds. The federal government provides funding for, to sort of compensate for the impact of poverty, right? Started in the Johnson administration. So Title I is funds intended to provide supplemental support to schools that are in high poverty. Those schools in Windham Southeast Supervisory Union include, we fund everybody except Dummerston and the high school. Dummerston, because their poverty levels aren't at the same level as other towns. The high school is simply because historically we really haven't funded. Our notion is that a much bigger bang per buck if you're funding that Title I support in the elementary schools and the middle school, so that students are caught back up by the time they get to the high school.
And Paul, is it both literacy and math?
Literacy and math is the focus of Title I, not science, social studies, other topic areas. It's really laser focus on science, on literacy and math.
So in budget season, that would be a pretty good thing to make sure that everybody's aware of, is, that the total amount is close to $1 million.
Almost $1.5 million. Total funding for Title I to the district, most of that to, it's $1,439,000, I think was the projection.
Which,
in total, over $1 million of that to the schools.
yeah, I would just say that very often people don't see the revenue stream. So the revenue stream is so important, like we were just talking about with transportation and so forth. So if the greater awareness to the revenue stream, as opposed, as in partnership with expenditures,
Sure.
is really, I think it's misunderstood.
Mm-hmm.
And the tighter the understanding of that, I think that it would help people
Yeah, 2 points.
be supportive.
That, Sean, yeah, good points. One is that the federal money, in most cases, cannot supplant local money. So the point there is, as Paul just said, most of the investment is in academic support teachers. We can't take this $800,000 and say, hey, move over, folks funded by local money. We're going to replace you with this federal. That's supplanting. That's paying down the cost of your local budget. The Title I in most federal grants are for new initiatives, new programs. So, your point, if you cut this budget, you're not doing anything for your community. You're actually worsening. That state will be happy to move that money somewhere else, but you lose the revenue, you lose the expense. And
the need still exists.
And the need still exists, and that's the same point that we were talking about earlier, because the principal mentor position has been funded. It's a specific criteria to fund. Again, reducing that has no impact on the local budget, and you cannot supplant federal funds for local initiatives.
Yeah, I think the importance of that is huge, and the dissemination of that information to the voters, I think, is very important. So I always say that since Frank started working here, I realized there's not very much that's linear about education finance. It's not a linear line. So
Yeah, a lot of.
It used to be, I think, before Act 60, but then
Yeah,
everything changed. So people are still doing catch-up because they sort of assume that pre-Act 60 is the way it still is, and it's not at all.
Can I confirm two things? One, that Vernon is listed here, but no other school for Title I, because this is SU.
And it's a sub-grant to the Vernon School District.
It's a sub-grant to the Vernon School
And a
District.
sub-grant to the Windham Southeast School District.
I see, okay. So
That
Vernon
funds those
being its own
positions in
district,
schools.
right. The other thing that you said, I just want to confirm, Dummerston is not entitled to Title I because the poverty rate is not yet high enough. Okay.
Something I will note on the middle of page 10, the summary for Title I, you'll notice that the difference between FY25 adopted, FY25 amended, and then moving to FY26 proposed, those numbers go up and down. The reason that they go up in the amended version is that we had a considerable carryover for a variety of reasons. That it's really important to make sure that when we have that money, we are making use of that money. So we used that money in FY25, and and we're not going to have that money to use in FY26. So you'll see that there's a difference of over $100,000 that we are not spending in Title I for FY26. Title III is we have received funding only recently. We only recently qualified. It's a small amount of money, and it is for as part of the ELL student population. The increase in the ELL student population finally put us in a position where we're eligible to receive a small amount of money, relatively small amount of money from the state for Title III. And that's why you don't see anything in FY25 actual or adopted, but you do in FY26.
And what is Title III for?
Title III is for ELL, multiple languages, English language learners.
Okay.
Title IV is a federal grant fund that is for well-rounded education, school climate, school health. So it's sort of a smorgasbord. And again, you can see we have small amounts that are subgranted to the two town school districts mostly for stipends for projects that we want to do using Title IV.
Excuse me, Paul. Doesn't Title IV include educational technology?
Absolutely, educational technology, that is the other category.
Yeah, I see some districts get big grants for ed tech. Are we getting as much as we can, or?
I'm not sure specifically what grants for ed tech. You're talking. I could.
Well, anyway, ed tech is expensive and it's growing in need. And
absolutely, yeah. There are limits to how much we can spend in ed tech. Built into the regulations for this particular grant are we have to spend at least, I believe it's 30% of the amount on well-rounded education and 30% of the amount on school health climate, and then the rest can be spent on ed tech. We tend to probably, in this particular case, underspend with respect to technology, but not hugely. Relative to the other two. So, and again, we had some carryover. We don't have this year, so you'll see a reduction in the expected expenditures for Title IV. Moving on, there's a Stronger Connections grant that is this is in the middle of page 13. It's a ESSER related. It's a pot of money that is still around, but it's administered separately at the state level. It's not something we have direct access to, but we are accessing the funds to provide for some programs, including right now a social emotional learning curriculum, second step that we're providing for the elementary schools. We're doing some social justice work, funding some social justice work. There's a sort of a variety of small projects that we have related to that. ESSER, you'll see in the middle of, bottom part of page 13, that's zeroed out for FY26, all of the ESSER funds. So several pages of zeros in FY26 per page. EHCY is another grant that is now gone, that we have zeroed out. And then the 21st Century Grant funds the BEAMS program at BAM's after school program. It's been around for quite a while. You can see the funding is stable year over year. And where's the summary for that is?
It's just a sub-grant, Paul.
Yeah, this is, did I skip ahead? Sorry. 21st Century, yeah, it's just right there. That's the summary. It's essentially flat funded. Some other ESSER grants are ESSER after school program. There was a couple of different programs. One, a collaboration with the Boys and Girls Club. The other was a collaboration at Putney Central School. Those funds are now gone, so those grants are zeroed out. And again, let's see, ESSER summer program grant, that wonderful program that we had, we no longer have the funds for that. After summer program, literacy and math, ELA, all these ESSER grants. We get on the bottom of page 21, we get to the Title II funds. And again, there's going to be a slight reduction, I believe. Where is that? 4651. The total small reduction, again, based on carryover. That's at the bottom of page 23. About $8,000 less for this year. That is the $24.95 is the Title II share of the consolidated administration, essentially Bryn's part of Bryn's funding that we're allowed to allocate some of the title funds to that consolidated admin pool for the coordination of the grants, and that's contributing to Bryn's salary. Consolidated admin, and then, and stop me if I'm going too fast. 5100 grant is.
Yeah, those are more like shared costs between a district and the supervisory union. So that's where if someone, a principal, cannot fill let's say a position and they need to contract with the SU to share a regular ed and a special ed employee, if this supervisory union employs, then it goes into this group, because we have to always record all transaction payroll, issue W-2s, all the things that go with employment, and then we bill that cost out. That's what that represents. We are fortunately starting to phase that out, where recruiting is working out so that we don't have to do that.
And the current plan is not to use that for FY26.
That's right. If you back to this full-time equivalent staffing document, at the very top of that page where it shows a 1.9 reduction in people, that's what that is. It's Putney and Academy being able to fully employ and not have to use the supervisory union as kind of a shared employment agent.
And further to that, I'm reminded on that same page, you'll see about midway down, curriculum coach, a reduction in Title I funding leads to a reduction in FTEs for Title I.
Yeah, so what Paul's highlighting is out of the 4 positions on this single page here that are been reduced, essentially 2 are the Title I because of limited funding, and then the other two are contracted service positions that are not needed.
Do you want to take back over with Medicaid, or do you want me to
Sure.
keep going?
So Medicaid is another reoccurring grant. It takes a tremendous amount of work to apply for the funds. We gain access to the funds by reporting our costs to support students that are accessing Medicaid related services, and then we get a reimbursement from the state of Vermont. We have an employee at the office, Tabby, who is, she generates this income. If we didn't have Tabby, we wouldn't have this $600,000 in income, and again, she's just done a terrific job maximizing our support. So you see on page 27, and that effort going from 560,000 toward 670,000, for the proposed year. That these funds go primarily back to the schools. So you see the sub-grants on page 26 for the Medicaid funds to the schools. And they are kind of identified by school. And much of the funds are to supplement nursing services, in some instances academic support, teachers. But it has to be a general investment. It can't be specifically for an individual subgroup of kids. It's a general support to improve education in our schools.
I can do the tobacco grant. That's one that we get on a yearly basis. That's funds that flow from the state based on the settlement with the tobacco companies. The lion's share of that funding is used to contract with building a positive community, used to be known as Brattleboro Area Prevention Coalition. A number of prevention efforts that they provide, including bringing some experts into schools, working with youth on youth council, that sort of thing, and also supporting some of the middle school leadership team.
Do they work with the problem with vaping?
Absolutely. There has been one of their employees, Rolf, I forget his last name.
Oh, yeah.
Has been in schools and is just doing this amazing stuff. He's in fact, at this point, connected with the State Department of Health and is providing confiscated vape tools so that the labs can actually understand what's in those vape cartridges, because it's kind of a big black box at this point, and it's kind of scary what they're finding in terms of. And Rolf has been a partner. Rolf Parker has been a real important part of that.
Corporate poisoning.
Asian Studies grant, that's a grant that we've had for quite some time that supports some of the salary of our Chinese language instructor at the high school and middle school. Don't get the Beehive Wellness grant anymore.
Right. And the final page there, on page 30, are some small grants that are administered and maintained, but there it is. The major reduction, as you saw as Paul went through the report, is the ESSER funding that's no longer available, which was both for school age and after school programming, including summer programming.
So if, the terminology, the ESSER cliff, is that what is represented in the $1.3 million?
In that we prepared for that. The reductions, you can see are not really in the ESSER funding. We knew that this was moving the ESSER funding. It doesn't really contribute to the 4 positions. It's primarily, as we said, Title I and those shared employee services. So no, it speaks to, I think, Tim, you had a question about multi-year budgeting. Back in 2020, 2021, we mapped out the trajectory of the ESSER funding. We knew right from the beginning that it was sunset in the first quarter of fiscal year 25, and we planned accordingly. So there has not been a cliff to address.
Gradual slope.
Yeah.
That's good news.
I have some questions if you're through. Are you through? On page 9 of the big sheet, you have your AOE Title I final, and then you have administration, health insurance, et cetera. What does that go to?
Part of the way that the federal grants work is that you can pull some funds from the titles for administration of the grant. Right, and because it's a combination of pulling from Title I, Title II, and a little bit from Title IV, it has to sort of be accounted for separately. And in terms of the object codes, or the function codes rather, that 2495 in the middle of that long set of account numbers, like for instance, administration 101, 404, 851, 11, 4, 2495, the account number's over on the left-hand side.
I can't find that account number, but that's okay. So that's basically what they are.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, it might even be in the...
Another comment on that, Jody, you might find useful. 2 things. One is the state of Vermont has not integrated the federal grants management system into this other uniform chart of accounts. It's really frustrating that they have not done that. So my point is it takes a great deal of administrative effort to apply for the funds, write the strategies, comply with the criteria, submit reimbursement, and get reimbursed. And so my point is without that effort, we would not get the money. There's no question about that. That's point number 1. Point number 2 is by assigning administrative funds to this function, it reduces the cost that we have to assess to our districts, to Vernon and Windham Southeast. So it's it's an important provision that we take advantage of. Otherwise, all of those costs go to the district, and somebody's got to do the work. And if you don't get the money.
Okay. The other one, question I had, a couple of questions. You talked about academic support. Now I noticed that Dummerston has a couple of academic support teachers. Do they get funded from grants?
Yeah.
Does the director of special education cost come out of Dummerston's bill, or is that a SU? Or
That's an SU, but it's another grant. So it
is a grant.
It's like Title I, where the administration is fully paid for by that grant.
And how about the speech person? Is that someone that works throughout the district?
The speech does work throughout the district,
Okay.
and it is assessed to the extent that we don't have some special ed reimbursement.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Other questions?
Time for dinner?
I think a drink. I shouldn't say that.
I would drink, and thank you all.
Yeah,
Thank you. Really informative and very helpful. Thank you.
Were you enjoying that one?
No, we have more things on our agenda.
But we are gonna, yes.
Well, first thing is old business policy, presented for a second reading. D1 board member education, G8 continuous improvement plan, and H2 family engagement.
Thank you.
And presented for a first reading. D1, personnel recruitment, selection, appointment, and background checks. D2, professional development, and D4, educator supervision and evaluation, probationary teachers. Okay, all of these policies have already been passed by the SG.
Of course.
And are they on the website?
They are on the website, and
They're linked in the agenda.
they are linked in the agenda, so you can like click right on the hyperlinks in the agenda that is also on the website. But they do exist under SD policy as well.
Yeah.
And the last thing on our agenda is future contract negotiations, which Tim wanted to talk about, so I didn't know exactly what you wanted to talk about. But I put it on.
Teacher contract negotiations, no, I
said future.
got an email about when it's gonna start.
Oh, okay,
Thanks.
so it looks like we don't have anything else on our agenda.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
There being.
Oh,
There,
Wait,
no, I'd rather postpone that item to the next SU meeting.
Oh, it was a different topic than the
Yeah.
future, okay.
future,
So,
okay, is.
We need to,
I'm spent, I
yeah,
can't
that's fine.
do anything.
So we'll be tabling that discussion.
Table. Madam Chair.
Yes.
I'm doing this fast. There being no further business before this board, I move we adjourn.
Any discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstention?
You have to practice
We
first
are-
speech.
We are adjourned at 7:46.